Alrighty, welcome to the first ever episode of the Why in the World podcast, hosting by yours truly, Nat Horner. And I couldn't have asked for a better first guest for this first podcast. He's a buddy of mine from college. He's been killing it in the country music scene. I've been keeping an eye on his career, been waiting to sit down and chat with him about some music, and today's today. So please welcome Nick Bordman to the cast. Nick, how you doing today?
Good, Nat. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. When I was getting this podcast started, I knew there was one guest in mind for a first episode, and you were it, my man. You were it.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Glad to be a part of it. Glad to be a part.
Thank you, thank you. Now, for the people at home who may not know who you are, maybe want to give yourself a quick little 30-second elevator pitch. Let the people know who we got on.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Nick Bordman. I'm active in the country music scene, and I'm a country singer from Waterloo, Ontario. And we're kind of out on a little tour right now. It's kind of the first stage in my music career that it's really been this planned out and scheduled, I would say. So things are kind of going well. I can't complain. We have some original music out on Spotify and Apple Music. I'm active songwriting, performing, and yeah, we're out on the road right now. So catch some dates at nickboardman.com.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you got a show coming up July 1st. This is going to come out the 7th. And we got some other dates coming up. We got July 24th, you're going to be at the Acoustic Grill. July 28th, you're going to be at Royal City Studios in Guelph. So, like you said, nickboardman.com for all the dates and information. So let's just start at the beginning. Tread Lightly, one of the first songs, if not your first single, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that one gets a little funky because we released that one in 2019, and then we just recently re-released it. But that is the first single. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that because I remember listening to that original song and the original version of it, and then when I was coming back to do some research, I saw the difference. So why go back and change it? What kind of was that prompt in you that were like, I got to go back and change it? Was it something that maybe your producer said you saw it? Like, what happened with that?
It's kind of like that's an interesting question. I think specifically for me, from the artistic standpoint, it was just I felt that I didn't do the story justice the first time. And it was an original song. It's based off stuff that's actually happened in my own world. And now that I've kind of progressed in my career a little bit in my musicality, I kind of thought that what, I should go back and recut that because I think there's some things that I can add to that, or I can tell the story in a little bit better of a way. So it was kind of nice to go back and kind of revisit it. And there's a couple of fun things in there. We changed some stuff with it. There's a bit of a key change. There's a bit of different stuff happening instrumentally. And I think it just kind of portrays that really the whole narrative that I was trying to push across originally.
Yeah, that's always the hard part as an artist is trying to find that exact like way you want to tell the story because you know it in your head better than anybody else. So it's good that you were able to go back to it. Who and what inspired that song? Like, what is the story behind that song? If you don't mind getting into it.
Please, I've lived it. I'll talk about
Hmm.
it. Basically, that one kind of stems from, gosh, this is a few years back now. I don't know specifically the year, but it was kind of like a high school fling. And I had been dumped at the time, and we've all been there. And dumped at the time, and I kind of came out of that, and I started seeing somebody else, and it was kind of that weird, almost emotional. I don't know. Purgatory sounds kind of dramatic, but being in between two things that you kind of can't decide which way you want to go. You got one foot kind of in the past, but you're telling yourself that you should, start allowing yourself to get into something new, but you're kind of still attached to those feelings from the past. So it's kind of Tread Lightly is just about being stuck in between those two spots, and just kind of being human in relationships. It's not as cut and dry as yeah, we're done. See you later.
Yeah, no, it's very complex, and I do think you cover that pretty well in the song. So when you're doing the whole songwriting process, let's start there too. What specific events are you looking for in your life? Are you kind of just like walking around with like a notebook, maybe something kind of catches your eye, like maybe the sun's hitting something the right way and that kind of inspires you? Like, where do you draw your inspiration from in the everyday life?
Yeah, I think primarily my inspiration comes from a lot of. I think my starting point is just listening to music, listening to stories, how they're told, kind of the language that's used, maybe with specific narratives, and that kind of seeing kind of what resonates with me. And I think that's as an artist, it's fine to do is to kind of draw inspiration from other pieces of art. Yeah, I think that where the art comes in is how you kind of bring that into your own head and spit it back out in your own words. And I think, yeah, a lot of other people's art inspires me. Being around people, being around friends, and seeing the stupid things that they get into, or the heartbreak they experience, and all these crazy things. It just kind of amalgamates into these stories that are just, it just breeds songs. Really, it's just the perfect grounds for songwriting. Um, I do a lot of writing outside. I just kind of, that's where I kind of find the creative niche a little bit. Um, but I really am not a big fan of songwriting sessions. I've done a few of them, but it's really hard for me to find, find time to go, oh, at 10:30 today you have to be creative. It's hard to schedule it in like that. But sometimes it works, and sometimes it's a miss. But primarily I like to start off by myself, write out in nature, and then kind of bring it to the other writers and say, look, here's a starting point, and then we kind of hammer it out from there.
Okay, yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's harder to kind of just sit down and be like, all right, I'm gonna be a creative person right now. I'm gonna write like the greatest song of my career at 10:30 p.m. exactly. You can definitely kind of limit yourself when you're putting yourself into that kind of a framework or anything like that. So let's dive a little bit more into your influences, like specifically people. I remember, I believe it was Hank Williams Sr. Was a big one that I remember you mentioned in high school or in college. Sorry, a lot. So who else kind of is like really inspirational to you, either like old country, new country, or even outside of the country space? You know, like a lot of pop artists I feel have kind of taken some of the beats of country, especially nowadays in mainstream, and kind of brought it to Sue. So who's inspiring you in the listening in the wheelhouse?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head with Hank Senior, Hank Senior, Hank Williams Jr., Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, all the old outlaw guys. I mean, it's those. That's kind of where my sound lives. To kind of come into the new realm a little bit, step outside of country, especially. I mean, still within the country vein, I would say is Tyler Childers, Sturgill Simpson. Um, Recently, over the past few years, I've kind of been diving into the blues a lot more. Some of the old blues from the 40s and 50s and things like that. And Lightning Hopkins, Robert Johnson, and some of these heavy hitters that it just, you can really see where the basic foundation of music was formed with these guys.
Yeah.
And they kind of set the stage for years to come. So blues is something that I'm in love with. Old Southern rock, Leonard Skinner, Marshall Tucker band. Um, and just, yeah, all these guys that just kind of, they've created a sound that at the time just was not maybe what the mold was, and wasn't what was working, but it worked for them because of that kind of niche sound, the difference that they were doing. um I'm trying to think of some modern guys. Yeah, a lot of the modern guys, especially in the country realm, it's a lot of this commercialized pop kind of sound, which I don't want to be one of those guys that goes, that's not country. Who am I to say? I don't know, but obviously it's working for them, and I can't knock what they're doing. But for myself, yeah, primarily the newer guys that I would listen to would be Tyler Childers, Sturgill Simpson. My guilty pleasure recently, which I'll admit here, has been Fast Car by Luke Combs.
Ooh.
I've I've been playing that song. I've been wearing that one out,
I
but
mean, it
yeah,
is a banger. It is a banger. You can't go wrong with it.
pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like to think that I kind of draw from all over the place. My mom is a big Eagles fan, so I listened to that growing up quite a bit. And my cousins are Spanish, so I have a lot of Latin influence as well. I think from some of the artistry, and just kind of the storylines to a lot of the songs and a lot of the music. So yeah, I like to think it's relatively diverse, where my influences come from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I didn't really catch the Spanish one, but like now thinking about it, was watching a video of you performing, I think Lightly and All Around in that shirt. I can see the Spanish influences in that, and the like in the way at least your bandmates play the guitar too. Like I'm starting to kind of see that a little bit. You mentioned this while you were talking about some of your influences, breaking out of the mold. I find, especially in the music industry, once something gets kind of worked, you talked about it with commercialized country now, it's rinse and repeat. Like you got your Luke Combs, your Morgan Wallens, your Jordan Davises, they're all kind of the same at the end of the day. No knock at them, they're killing it in what they're doing, but it is very commercialized. So why do you think it's important for artists, kind of like yourself, or some of the ones that have come before you, to break out of those molds that are set by the industry? And why do you think it adds just kind of that little bit of extra spark into the music or the art that's being created?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good place for me to kind of start with that question would be, back in the '70s, there was the outlaw country movement. It was kind of led by, I mean, many historians will argue kind of who led it, but I think one of the biggest figures that kind of spearheaded that was Waylon Jennings. And he was going against the Nashville establishment and the sound and the whole commercialized machine of how music was created and spit back out to the world. And he kind of said, "Look, I'm starting out. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm changing the system," and that's what he did. And so many, he set the path for so many musicians to come behind him and kind of follow. And I know that the kind of the trickle of that those effects have still, or they're still happening today. There's still a lot of artists coming up that are saying, "Look, I don't like the system that's in place right now. I don't like the hoops I have to jump through to get people to hear my music. So you know what? I'm going to strike out and kind of do my own thing." And that's something that inspires me in every probably decision I do within music. And I mean, don't get me wrong. There's many artists, there's many friends of mine that are signed to labels or are in the commercial scene, and it's amazing too. It's still an incubator for music, but I think it's a different thing being an independent artist, that where you're driving the train, you're pushing it, you're pushing your career, the momentum is completely in your field. And yeah, I think about just how being a little bit different like that can kind of resonate with other people, because how many people out there, themselves maybe feel like they don't really fit quite into the mold of whatever's going on, whether it
Yeah.
be their job, their relationships, their own career, whatever it might be. So I think when you kind of see one of these pioneer kind of guys, or these outlaw guys per se, it kind of really resonates with you, and you think to yourself, oh, there was somebody else that kind of felt like how I did, that they didn't quite fit the mold of what exactly was being presented at the time, but they still got there on their own accord. Maybe it took a little bit longer, but they found a way. So I've just always been fascinated by that kind of entrepreneurial outlaw kind of approach to the music scene, especially. But yeah, I think if you, especially in the industry, everyone's going to try to tell you they're an expert about how things work, how the whole machine works. And I think until you kind of find out your pacing and rhythm with it, that's truly kind of how I think you find the momentum of your own career.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I don't think there's like a roadmap for every single person. I think everybody's journey is a little bit different, and I think it's great to have that like original music model of like you get signed to a label, you do your like 10,000 hours doing shows at dive bars, all these different things. But the independent music scene is just kind of so much more accessible to people now, which I think is what makes it so much more rewarding when you actually find success. Kind of like what you're starting to find now is, you can grind at it for years. Like I was doing music for 5 years and never saw the same success that you found in just a couple of years. And it's really cool to kind of see the dichotomy and see the different ways that it can go, and seeing like knowing that the roadmap that you set out for yourself necessarily wouldn't work for me. But the roadmap that I was working on wouldn't have worked for you necessarily. Like it's just really kind of cool. And like you said, yeah, that whole outlaw feeling of like, it starts a movement. It can start a movement, like anything like that.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think just to kind of tack onto that, even is I think when people think of a musician or they think of a music career, you're so focused on, the product, the
yeah,
the the music, which is such an important thing. I mean, you can't have a career if you're selling a bad product or something that you don't believe in yourself. But I think the other part of the artistry that a lot of people don't focus on is the I don't want to use the word the hustle. That sounds kind of funny, but
yeah,
the is the chase, is you pursuing that career and kind of chasing down those opportunities. Um, because at the end of the day, I mean, you can make excuses all you want. It's really on you, and that's my opinion. That's my take. Your momentum is based upon solely how hard you're willing to push and go. And I think that kind of struggle and that kind of chase, I think that's completely a part of the artistry that I think a lot of people kind of, they don't pay attention to that sometimes, or they just go, everyone's working hard to make music. That's a reality, but I think if you look specifically into the lives of your favorite musicians or these, indie artists that you're listening to, you'll find some really good things.
yeah, no, absolutely. And even kind of off that, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, like this person just got lucky one day. And they don't see the work behind it. Like they don't see the hours that that person may have spent just like re-recording that one line, just to get the right inflection, the right pitch, the right tone, rewriting that one word that just didn't quite fit into the sentence. I think you really hit it on the nail there, where it's like, you know, yeah, it's great to, have that natural talent or anything, but if you're not putting in that work, if you don't believe in the product that you're selling, then how can you get anyone else really to believe with you, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean it's they say you can't write songs unless you do some living. It's hard to write songs without living experiences.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So speaking of writing, let's move on to Home now, because I believe that was the next single, and that was the first one I remember you releasing from college. So who was that about? How did that come about? And why do you choose that for your second single?
Yeah, so Home was a really fun one. I co-wrote that one with Matt Cable and Emma Glancy, both Southern Ontario musicians. They're great. And we all got together one day and sat around a piano and kind of hammered this tune out. And we just wanted a nice, upbeat, um, kind of anthem that just you kind of united people. And it's nothing crazy. There's no complexity to it. There's no fun little tidbits of anything. There's nothing cryptic in it. It's just it's straight ahead what it is. It's about being together and really finding that person that makes you feel full and kind of that warm feeling and just kind of everything surrounding that and kind of spending time with that person, just wasting the day away and how that person makes you feel. Um, but we're looking at it through the lens of that person's kind of now gone and you reminiscing on that on the times that you spent with them and those feelings that are kind of again kind of still there and that are kind of consuming you more than they should be. So yeah, specifically, there's probably a couple instances in my life I can think that that song would be applicable to, probably more than I'd like to say. But yeah, I think that's yet again something that most people can kind of attest to.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's home for you now then? Is it like a partner? Is it maybe a family member? Like who, when you think of home and you think of comfort, like who is that person for you right now?
Well, I mean, not to make it like a drawn out answer or anything, but I think for me personally, home is kind of the support that I have around me in my life at the moment. I've never had to the degree of the amazing people I have around me right now that I get to continually work with or just have in my life consistently. And if it wasn't for the people that were around me right now, this wouldn't be happening. Music wouldn't be happening. And it's a nice feeling to have a good group of people behind you. And that within that, my own family, incredibly supportive of it, coming to all the shows, sharing music, telling people about things and just kind of always supporting me on my journeys of running around playing music all over the place and it's really nice to have people around and most of the people that work with me and my team right now are friends. All the guys in my band are now we're all friends now. Everybody outside of that, selling merchandise, planning dates, setting up for shows, things like that, or co-writing. Most of these, I would say 90% of these people are personal friends of mine. And that's kind of been a dream to work with people that are friends and
Yeah.
that and kind of be around a good little nest egg of people that are kind of on the same thought. So it's been a really good time.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's always important to kind of surround yourself with the people that care about you the most, because they'll help you kind of keep you on the right path. They'll help you not make those same kind of mistakes that a lot of younger artists will make, especially as they're starting to find some success. So I'm glad to hear you have like a very good, strong support system and keeping it close and keeping it in the family.
Yeah, and I mean that's always kind of been a dream of mine to employ friends and have that kind of support system where we kind of work off each other. A lot of my friends are in the creative industry somehow, photography, film, music, whatever it might be, comedy, things like that. And I think it's really nice to be able to kind of have a little bit of a symbiotic relationship with people where you can still work off each other career wise, but you're still maintaining that friendship and kind of blossoming that as priority one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps having that kind of multifaceted because you're all helping each other at the same time. You got somebody who can help film your music videos. That's more experience for him. It's more experience for you in front of the camera. It's like you said, a very nice symbiotic kind of relationship to have. And hopefully that goes well for you. Obviously recently we saw Ian and Anthony from Smosh. I don't know if you grew up with them like I did, but they had their company. They got it, their friendship kind of got in the way of it, or the company got in the way of the friendship. They split apart, come back together now. So it's always a beautiful story when that can kind of all work out in the end. Um, so when I was looking over your website, just kind of doing some like overall research, I noticed you went to Seneca for some independent songwriting and performance. So I kind of wanted to know, we'll start back with radio as I keep mentioning it. So why did you want to go into radio in the first place? Like what was going through your mind back 2018, 2019 when you were applying to colleges? What made Conestoga's radio broadcasting program stick out?
Yeah, well, I kind of fell into it ass backwards a little bit. I have a joke kind of amongst my friends that I've been to every school in Ontario at this point. Um, it just I so basically I started out of high school. I went to the University of Guelph for a year, and in my time there, I went between was it four? I can't remember. Three different programs at least. That I kind of just kept jumping around because I was so unhappy with what I was in, and I just was not finding where I was. It felt like it wasn't my place. I was in science heavy courses and programs, and it just wasn't really my thing. So after being there for about a year, I was looking online and it's just really thinking, what do I want to do with my life? And I'd always been a creative person. I'd always been fascinated by music. At the time, I was working on Tread Lightly for the first time, so I was just kind of thinking, where does my passion really lie? And I'd come across the radio broadcast program at Conestoga, and so I set up a tour. I went and checked it out, and after chatting with some friends and kind of really looking into it, I thought, this could really be a creative avenue for myself. And and yeah, I think I'm sure you had the same experience as me. We had to go in prior to accepting the program and kind of having like a little interview and a little tour around the
Yeah.
facilities and the studio and everything. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. The people that were there, I thought, this is home. This is a spot that would really work. And I don't regret any decisions. It was such a great experience. Creatively, I think it blossomed a lot of things, and I think it opened my eyes to a lot of other avenues. Working with, especially people like you, working with other creative people that are passionate about being creative and creating content and things like that. It's nice being around people that are similar mind.
Yeah, 110%. I think that's kind of also what drove me to it because I've been told for years, like, oh, you have such a voice for radio, like working at McDonald's, Tim Hortons, or Starbucks. Like, you know, people come through the drive-thru, like, oh, did you take my order? Oh, that's such like a really nice radio voice. So yeah, that was kind of what drew me to it. And I did the same kind of thing. I went to Trent for a year. And I was doing sociology, business, and teaching, like all in kind of as like one single major. And I just got burnt out so quickly. I realized it wasn't really for me. I was so far away from my friends, so I wanted to come back. What's some of your favorite memories from like Conestoga radio? Probably more of the pre-COVID stories than anything else. But what sticks out to you when you look back at that?
Yeah, what a time that is. I mean, that group of people, like we were going from class and then all of a sudden navigating the pandemic. But I really think personally, my favorite memories from those classes were just the those classes where we'd get to make, it would be a commercial or an ad or something, and we would just be in class, and it would, whoever the prof might be would just let us go for a couple hours, and we would come back and kind of listen to them all, and I loved just soaking that in.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, sometimes some of them sucked. Other times, some of them were great, and it was just kind of nice, kind of hearing that the whole spectrum of creativity in between. And I think that inspired me the most because I would hear something and go, "Oh, so and so is willing to take a little bit of a risk on that one. I'm gonna kind of implement that in my next one." And that was really fun, especially when they were collaborative and you can kind of bring other people on the projects. And I think yeah, that was really some of my favorite times. I mean, even running the station. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't love all the 6 a.m. shifts, but some of the later ones at the CJIQ were a lot of fun, and coming up those breaks and just chatting on air with whoever, and or even reading the news. The whole experience was relatively fun.
Yeah, no, it was an all around good one. What did you do for your co-op placement, by the way? I don't think we ever talked about that.
Oh yeah, so I don't know if you remember Laura Harding. She was like our director, I think, or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So she had sent me a message and said she was interested in having me do her. She owns an antique company down in Cambridge called Southworks Antiques. Shout out. And she had asked me if I was interested in doing some programming for their store. Basically, it would be my voice over the PA, just talking about whatever, and then music would play. So I came up with a whole catalog of, here's some facts about the 50s, here's some songs from the 60s, and I would just say little bits about entertainment at the time, what was big at the time politically or socially or whatever, or just the little facts about stuff, retro facts, and then old 50s and 60s music would play. And so I did that for a few months, and again, that was a lot of fun. I had
Yeah.
complete creative control on that, so that was a lot of fun. What
Nice.
did what did you end up doing?
I was with Scott and Kat actually at the beat. So I did the
Right, I remember
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I pretty much just helped Scott write some of the news stories. I'd help Kat with blog posts. I helped them run different contests. Like there was a um I think it was like National Beer Day, one of the days that I was working with them. So I had to come up with a whole bunch of different beer facts. And I was so disappointed because like I had to listen to the show every morning, which was fine. It's a great show. Shout out 91.5 The Beat. Not that they need one. Um, but had to listen to it, and I was just listening to this one guy get every single question right. And I was like, this took me forever, man. Like, come on. But they shouted me out a couple of times on air, which was really, really cool to hear. Like, even being in the industry, anytime you hear yourself on the radio or like hear your name on the air, it's just I still feel like a 6 year old, like getting all giddy listening to George and Tara in the morning. So yeah, that was what I ended up doing. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I hopefully can get back in contact with those guys, maybe get them on the cast sometime.
Definitely. Yeah, I remember being in the CJIQ or the CJIQ days especially was you know, you'd come up with the bits, and I'm sure you can this resonates with you too. Some days you just weren't into it
Yep.
and bits were just not there. And I remember my dad owns an auto shop, and I was out at the auto shop one day, and somebody came out and they said, "Oh, you know, Nick, we heard you out on the radio. You got to get better at that. You're not, you know, we know you got more in the tank than that. Stop it with those hacky jokes." So that
Yeah.
was kind of my motivation to clean up a little bit.
No, I get you on that. There was one time I was doing breaks and I was completely dry creatively, and I just did impressions for a good minute. None of them were very that good. It was just like, all right, what do I got in my wheelhouse? And just throwing them into the mic and just hoping something landed. And I no one has ever brought that up to me. And I'm just hoping whoever was listening to CJIQ at that point was just like, did did I just hear that right? I just if I confused one person, then my job complete. My job's complete there.
That was always my post show anxiety was how is this sitting with the world right now?
Yeah.
Did an F bomb pop out and somebody's tracked that somewhere and I'm about to get arrested or whatever's gonna happen?
Yeah.
But
Did I accidentally just like say I did some sort of crime and now the cops are gonna knock down my door? Yeah, it's a brutal industry to be in for anything live. You're like, oh crap.
yeah,
Uh
if you like swearing or talking about unruly things, don't go on
don't
public radio.
yeah, don't go on public radio. Go private or podcast. Those are your those are
Mhm.
your two best bets. So so from Conestoga, did you go right to Seneca afterwards? Did you take a little bit of time off? Like what was the transition period like for you?
Yeah, so right after Seneca or Conestoga, I had applied to Seneca's independent songwriting performance program. Um, and I can't remember the month, but it was kind of right after we had graduated. Part of going into that program is an audition process. And due to COVID, usually an in-person audition would occur, but because of the restrictions at the time, it had to be an online submission. So we had to send in two songs, an original and a cover song, and we would send it in, and I guess the board of whoever would kind of assess them, and then they would let you know. So a few months after the fact, and you know, I really, really did not think I would be kind of at the caliber to get there at that point, because at that point in time, I'd never really been professionally trained. It was just kind of, you know, let's boogie around in the garage, and so I never thought that was really going to hit. And I got a message back the one day, and they said that I'd been accepted into the program, and so that was up in York. So I moved up to Oakville with some friends just to get a little bit closer.
Okay.
And yeah, that was a great time driving into Seneca at York. I was on the York University campus, and it was
Oh,
just such a network of performers. Our professors were all involved in the industry. They were past musicians, current musicians, producers, artist management, all over the board, and it was just great meeting. It was small group. I think probably like a radio program, probably no more than 20 or so people
okay.
that were just kind of creatively inclined and kind of doing the same thing, chasing down a music career.
Oh wow, nice. And why specifically Seneca? Was it something about the program, the professors, just like the campus in general? Why specifically did you choose them?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it also applied to a couple other music programs throughout Ontario. And Seneca just looked really attractive to me. As a young kid, probably up until I was probably about 7 or 8, I was enrolled in acting, and I was actually going to do, you know, like commercial acting and things like that. And I just kind of fell out of that. But I've always been, you know, a big fan of the performing arts, especially the performing side of music. I love performing. I love being up on stage, kind of doing my thing. And yeah, that program's very performance heavy. getting up on stage, figuring out what you're doing, finding your own kind of self on stage, and kind of how you can kind of build your show up. And that was something I was always fascinated with. And that program covered the theory side of things, performing, the writing side of things. So it really kind of amalgamated all these loose ends together for me. And I really like to think it set me kind of on a straight and narrow kind of career point.
Yeah, that's really awesome. That's awesome that you were able to find that. What's one memory that sticks out from that time of your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the ones that really resonates with me was the one performance class. It was the first performance class. We all go into this green room, and there's probably about 20 of us, and everybody brings in guitars or piano or whatever they're going to do, and everyone's supposed to perform one song. And the one song is supposed to kind of showcase who you are as an artist and kind of give the class a little bit better of an idea of who you are artistically. And so many people went up and went, "I'm sad. Here's the song about why I'm sad." And sad songs work. People are sad. That's a real
Yeah.
thing. But people would go up, and there was a lot of tears, and it was just kind of, I was starting to notice almost every act was kind of the same, in terms of boo hoo. And so I went up and I sang an old Hank song about some drinking problem, and my woman won't let me in and all this stuff. And um, it was just kind of nice to kind of get feedback from that, from the people that aren't typically listening to something like that.
Yeah.
um, and it was great to kind of hear the critiques, especially because that was something that I wanted to build on. I'm a big proponent of, or a big supporter of, filming yourself while you perform, because how are you supposed to know what to fix if you can't actually see what's happening
Yeah.
when the machine's in motion? So I really like that, and it just throughout the semester, just kind of progressing and building as a performer, and then doing that last performance in that class and kind of contrasting from where that point A started to getting to point B, and just kind of the skill set I'd acquired and the bad habits I'd kind of dropped. And it was so much fun. I'd made some lifelong friends from that program.
That's really awesome. That's really awesome. Yeah, I find performing a lot of artists, it's the tortured soul, it's the like my life is so hard and I want to express that. So it's cool that you kind of were the one to break up that rhythm, because I mean, I fell into it a lot too when I was doing music. It was just like I'm sad and everyone should be sad with me because we're all sad sometimes. Um so we are kind of getting a little strapped for time because I did forget that Zoom has a pro version and a regular version. So just to kind of wrap up, let's try out your band. Because I was listening all around specifically in that solo. Who did that solo? Because that was one of the I was not expecting that solo to go as hard as it did. I'll admit it, but that was hard. So let's talk about your band. Who you got in it, and how'd that kind of come about?
Yeah, so really, as of now, those recordings that exist that are out to the public, that's not the current band that I'm touring with.
Okay.
Those are some session guys, but you know what? Nonetheless, incredible musicians. All around, the solo that you're talking about with the steel was Mitch J, and he's a pedal steel player. I believe he's out west. I've never actually had the chance to meet him. He's always out on the road playing, but a great player and a good guy too. But yeah, crazy steel player. I believe he won Steel Player of the Year a couple years back.
Makes sense.
Um, yeah, it checks out. But he was amazing on that. And yeah, coming out of the session stuff, the band I'm currently touring with it's a nice mix of guys from all these different backgrounds. Um, Johnny Lantine, my drummer, he's a childhood friend of mine. I've been friends with him since I was about 3 years old, and he's kind of always been active in music. So it's really cool to be working with him. My One of my guitarists is Caleb Koo, local musician that I was walking down the street about a year and a half ago, and this band was playing Uptown Waterloo, and they were just playing for change or whatever. And this wicked jazz guitarist is just ripping all these licks and stuff. I went, wow, that's impressive. And so I chatted with him. He gave me his card, and we've been gigging together ever since, and we're
Wow.
good friends now. And Caleb's he's a killer on guitar, and he's full-time music. That's what he does. He teaches, he gigs, he plays with so many local acts around town, and not even in town, all over. Um, and then from my Seneca program, I was able to hook up with Gabe Potter, a player up out of Toronto and Guelph area. And Gabe is just a killer player and a great guy to be around. Um, yeah, we kind of hit it off in the program. I think we kind of thought the same, similar thoughts to music. He was kind of coming from a different genre wise, but little bit of crossover, and Gabe's just been a tremendous force in the band. Um, and then Grady Kaplan, who's out on tour right now in the West. He's a pedal steel player. Uh, Grady's great. Grady's amazing. We hooked up, I think, through Instagram. He's down from Sarnia way, and yeah, he's not currently touring with us. He's out on a few other tours right now, but we're missing him. He'll be back in the fall. And yeah, it's just a really great group of guys. And on bass, I have Mitch Camacho. He's a Guelph Humber or Humber graduate from Toronto,
Okay.
and he plays big upright bass. So he's playing that all the show, and he's a great guy to be around. He's always happy and getting into the songs. But I know it's been said many times. I'm not coining the phrase, but it's so important to play with people that you want to play with. It
Yeah.
really is, because I played with some other people before, here and there, that it really ruins the experience for yourself. If they're not on the same level of musicality per se, or they just didn't take the time to learn the songs, or they're showing up late to things, or they're showing up mad, or they're challenging things. It gets really sticky quick. So it's really important to play with people that you want to be around, because I would say 90% of the time you're spending time with these people as opposed to playing with them. There's a lot of waiting around or being backstage in the green room, or sitting around outside before a gig. And if you're hanging out with people you don't like, it makes the whole thing a lot more strenuous.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree on that. 100% agree. And as we wrap up, as we come to the close, as what is going to be tradition on this podcast, sum up in about 60 seconds. Why do you do everything you do in a day? Like, why, when you wake up in the morning, what's your motivation? Why do you drive the way that you do, if you had to sum it up?
Yeah, I would say why I do what I do is because I think I'm in I think I want to create this life that this is my dream. I would say I want to create this life where I can make money on my terms, my own terms, in the way that I want to do it, and support myself and my family in the accordance of how I would like to do it. In so doing that, surrounding myself with this network of friends, family, creative people that I want to be around, people that I genuinely believe, they add something to the conversation, or maybe I can learn from them. There's always time to learn. And I just love kind of creating that little network of people being around me. Because I think that personally, for my own career and other people's careers and lives, I think that sets everybody up for the best opportunities. I'm a firm believer, especially with music, the more opportunity there is in general, the better the whole pie gets. I think it gets a little competitive sometimes when, so and so's playing this, so and so's doing that. Why am I not doing that? Well, that's not the right way to look at that. Opportunities, I think, kind of creates a better environment for the whole industry, when there's a lot more opportunity. But yeah, back to the why. Getting up in the morning, doing my day to day, going to my part time job, doing things that aren't music related, to kind of chase that dream of being a musician, is just creating that life where I can be self dependent or independent, making money on my own terms creatively from my content, and employing the people around me that are just the people I want to be around, friends, family, and kind of having this nice little spot to myself.
That's perfect. Well, we have unfortunately reached time, or we're about to in about a minute. So thank you so much for coming on to this episode of the podcast. It was great reconnecting with you. Hopefully we'll be able to do some more of this, maybe go out for a drink sometime and get you on the cast again one day.
Definitely, man. It was great to see you. Great chatting, and thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for Nick, if you want to check him out live, we've got the Acoustic Grill July 24th, and then Royal City Studios July 28th. So make sure you go check him out. Check him out on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you stream. The website's nickboardman.com. Socials is Nick Boardman. It'll be all in the description down below. Thank you again, Nick, and have a good one.
Thanks, Nat. You too, man.
Thank you.